everybody, it's Kat, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Backstory Sessions. I'm joined today by my co host, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Kat. Hey, everyone. How are you?
Well, this is the moment we've been waiting for. We've talked about this episode for, several weeks now.
Yeah, it's finally here.
It is, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we've been able to talk to some pretty interesting people over the years. This one is really high up there on the list.
Very high up there because having one of the top 5 songs of all time is, very impressive.
Yeah, quite an achievement for sure.
And for us to be able to interview him, who, is a singer-songwriter, is also quite an achievement for us in the podcast. It's an honor for sure.
Yep, it definitely is. Listened to his music growing up a lot and, still know all the words to a couple of his songs and, it is pretty cool.
It's nice. I think one of the great things about podcasting that we've had the opportunity to do is, make connections from childhood or, teenage years to connecting with the people that, made that part of our lives happen, really.
Well, I wouldn't say made them happen, but I understand what you're talking about. They're
Yeah.
just, people that we remember from those years and certainly a lot of pivotal television shows and movies and, music and stuff like that. People that we've listened to and watched and been able to enjoy their work and stuff. It's, pretty cool to be able to talk to them.
And have memories with songs, specific songs. Always, I mean, there are many songs that as soon as I hear it, it takes me to a certain memory.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
maybe more than one memory. But, we had Steve Dorff on, and that obviously through the years took me back to my high school
Right. Yeah.
senior year because that was our class song. So it's really amazing too, I think, the crossover, how we've been able to, in someone's backstory, see how it connects to other people that like so we have this information and we have some other information and then as you start to hear a backstory, that person has had something additional to to add to the backstory of another major moment from either a movie or TV show or song.
Right, yeah. That's happened on many occasions.
And so I always find that really cool. It's like it's just for me, it's like having little snippets of history come to life, at least during the interview.
Yep, I agree. It's pretty cool. So, we should mention who we're talking to, maybe? What do you think?
I think so, although faithful listeners will already know this is Don McLean, and American Pie, of course, is one. It is the song that is the top 5 songs of all
Mm-hmm.
time. But also Vincent, when I was teaching, I used this song very often too when we studied Van Gogh. And so Starry Night, of course, is
Right.
that story. And so I'm curious if he was a fan of Van Gogh because Van Gogh had a very difficult life. He had a lot of struggles, and so I'm very curious, like what drew him in to write this song, and even American Pie. The day the music died, that kind of is a reference. If you didn't know what the song is about, it would at least zero you in a little bit. But I mean, are we on the right track or is there more to it? We were actually going to get to ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's answered that before, and hopefully he won't be too upset if we ask him again. But
Yeah, yeah, because we're asking like out of the place of just knowing, what hearing it directly from the source.
yeah,
So, which is always better, I think, than, reading about it because people, can interpret things different ways. And often when they write, they put their spin on it.
hmm
Um, and so it would just it's going to be so interesting for us to know we're talking to Don McLean and this is what he's telling us.
yeah. So before we get into that interview, let's talk about your play, your Christmas play. You just finished up your 3 shows, and tell us how that went.
Well, Don McLean has the day the music died. I feel like, this is the day the director died. I mean, so, it's been a long weekend. Like, it's really when you have a lot of shows, multiple shows in a weekend, and especially multiple shows in one day,
Yeah,
and you're mobile, so you're setting everything up, packing everything up, moving on, doing the same thing, rinse, repeat kind of thing.
right.
It's even even the younger actors, which pretty much is everyone, but it's a lot to prepare mentally for it, to stay like motivated so that you're just as fresh for the last audience as you are for that first one of the morning.
Right.
So in this case, we had 11 o'clock a.m. show, and then you get finished with that show, and it's about 1 o'clock,
hmm
and then so everyone's hungry by that point, and you have to be at your next show by 5 p.m. So you have 4 hours.
Right.
And so it's like trying to decide, okay, do we eat and then, go home, which, home could vary 30 to 45 minutes,
Right.
depending. So really, by the time you would travel the 45 minutes, you're not going to get very much rest time because you got 45 minutes that you have to travel back.
hmm
And, so it's just things like that of trying to figure out the logistics when you have multiples in a day. But I will say that our 11 o'clock audience, it's the first time we had been to that venue. It's an assisted living facility. And they were such a receptive audience, like just so much energy. It was amazing. And so, just like with hearing Don McLean and in this interview that we're going to do, I won't soon forget that performance.
Hmm. Oh, that's cool. And the
Yeah.
other two went as well, or
Yes, I mean, so the one at the depot was beautiful. The decorations are beautiful.
hmm
So many people there, a lot of interaction, and people love the food, just the atmosphere, very positive.
hmm
And, I feel like there was a second wind that just kicked in there, after the wait and all the
hmm
things in between. So everybody was ready. Today probably was when the really tired part came.
for
And I'm
you or
not
for
really
everyone?
tired, but your voice, everything really. It's hard if you're singing, if you're at,
Right.
singing, having to project, all of that. It does take somewhat of a toll.
hmm
So it was a little harder today, and also it was raining. Nobody really wants to travel and unpack stuff in the rain.
Right.
But it turned out to be a very lovely show too. And, a really nice way to end it. And it feels Christmassy. So the Nutcracker Suite was very good to us. And I will say that the cast we finished with was incredible, very talented, and worked very well together. And, that's what made the show really so spectacular.
Excuse me. All right, then. So this is the last podcast before Christmas. Well, no, we have one next week, right?
Yes, we do have one to say Merry Christmas next week.
Okay, so that one will be just us and yakking about Christmas and all of that. Hang on a second. There's a plow going by my house.
Oh, what?
A snow plow.
Do you have snow?
Apparently, when I went outside, like, it was about 40 minutes ago, it was not, I mean, it had just started snowing, and now there's plow going by, so, I mean,
Wow. Oh my gosh.
yeah, I want to look out the window and see what that looks like, so just talk for a second.
All right. Well, I would prefer the rain to the snow, but definitely if you want to get into the Christmas spirit, then snow does have that like mental effect.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I choose to shop. That can have the same mental effect for me. So,
Yeah, I was shopping today a little bit.
oh.
So the just as an update, the ground is not covered, but there's a state truck that plows the roads out, around the town or whatever, and they're in the parking lot across the street, and apparently they were plowing that. So.
Mm. Are you supposed to get a lot of?
No, I think we're only supposed to get like maybe 2 inches at the most, but
Mm.
so I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're afraid it's going to freeze or whatever, and they're putting salt down or something. So
Is it also pretty cold?
yeah, it's in the 20s here right now.
Mm. Well, 'tis the season to be, yeah, jolly.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be happy when it's spring.
So will I. Well, of course, we hope everyone stays warm and safe. I'm glad your Christmas party, you might want to update on that as well.
Yes, I finally chose something to wear and went to the party on Friday, and it was a good time. I mean, company Christmas party and very nice and good food and, cocktails and all that. And it was fun. So,
And you looked very handsome, and so you made good choices in your
sure.
attire.
Okay. I wasn't underdressed this year. Let's put it that way.
That's right. And so I feel like there should have been an award given out for that.
Yes, most improved dresser. That would have been me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, not everyone, we are not living in the day where everyone gets a trophy.
No,
So,
no participation trophy for me. But
no. But
um,
anyways,
would have been nice.
we are happy that you made the decision and got that over, before all the snow and all that.
Yeah, so stressful. Well, do you have all your shopping done?
No.
No,
But
me
now
either.
that the show is ended, I can like spend a bit more time because really, we have what, a week and a half until it's Christmas. So
Right.
I really feel like I need to make that a priority for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you should because, I don't want to be without presents on Christmas.
Well, now there's some things already in the works, so
Yeah.
like some are on the way,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, that's good.
the snow could like put a damper on things.
I think it'll be all right.
Yeah. If the drones don't get us.
Right, yeah. Supposedly there was a drone sighting here. For those of you who don't know, there's like all these unexplained drones flying around New York, New Jersey, apparently Pennsylvania now.
Also Tennessee.
Yeah, so just different places around.
Military bases and such.
Yeah, so nobody quite knows the origin of them, but which is kind of weird because you would think if it's like a unknown thing that there would be probably a pretty good size effort to find out where they're coming from. So I don't.
Well, it has piqued people's curiosity, if nothing else. Social media, I've read like a lot of, conspiracy theories about what they mean. I mean, people are trying to make sense of something that we don't normally experience.
Yeah, well, of course, conspiracy theory because everybody seems to be ruled by that these days. But I've seen a lot of different things too. Like, well, it could be aliens. It could be, whatever, Chinese or something like that. I don't know. People say
Well,
all kinds of crazy crap.
the last thing I read today, it did not say, it said they could not reveal yet. So, when they can't reveal, that automatically, makes me think, okay, sure, I'll trust you. But
Yeah, I can't reveal
anyways,
why. I mean,
he said that we're gonna look back on 2024 as like the calm before the storm, and in 2025 all hell's gonna break loose. So
oh well, you better stock up on what were we supposed to stock up on?
rice,
Yes,
toilet paper,
rice,
milk,
toilet paper, orange juice, and something else.
milk. You have
Milk,
to.
yes, because that doesn't go bad apparently.
Well, get a cow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Well, even for winter, it's always good to. I don't particularly stock up on rice and beans. I think were on that list too.
No, yeah, of course, rice and beans. You gotta have that.
Yeah, yeah. So that sounds about right. But peanut butter, something can last a long time. Tuna,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I try to go with the, more like that.
All right. Well, let's talk to Mr. McLean, and we'll find out what he's got going on. We'd like to invite everyone to go to his webpage, which is what is his webpage?
Yeah, so they're going to be able to hear American Boys latest that's his latest album, and there's also a title track, and you can hear, all of the tracks on the new album. But I will say this too. He is working with someone who is illustrating and writing a book. And so, he's got a lot of projects going on outside of just music. And
Yeah,
he's
books
pretty
and
fascinating.
yeah, he's still touring a lot, and yeah, pretty interesting for sure. So you can go to donmclean.com and find links to his albums and all of that. He's on YouTube, all the socials. So yeah, I would encourage people to go and check out his new music. And, if you ever get a chance to see him in concert, I would definitely do that.
Absolutely. So, we're just very fortunate that we're going to get to ask some questions right now.
Yeah, I'm excited. It should be pretty interesting. So, I've heard that he's sort of a colorful character, so there may be a little bit of profanity in here, but I don't know that for sure. Just throwing that out there in case there is.
It happens from time to time that, everybody expresses themselves differently.
Yeah.
And we never know with our guests, like, exactly what kind of, they feel comfortable with us. And it's just, it's like having a conversation. So, I look
Yeah,
forward.
because when we're not recording, we're swearing at each other and.
Well, I'm not now.
uh, it's funny.
I'm the calm, and
Yes, yes, the
I'm
common.
2024, and you're
Right, yeah, 2025 for sure.
all right. I mean, this is an honor, so let's treat it as such.
All right. Well, sorry. We'll talk to Don and see what he's got to say.
Awesome. Let's get started with this. Your backstory. Like everybody, I think American Pie is going to come to everyone's mind when they hear your name. And probably that's going to be the case for, decades and decades to come. But what I don't know a whole lot about, or didn't really, was a little of your backstory of like, where did you grow up and what were your musical influences, or was music a part of your life, like, always? Or tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I was born in New Rochelle, New York, in a house on 15 Mulberry Lane in Larchmont Woods, and in 1945, October 2nd. And my mother was what they used to call a housewife, and that is she stayed home and made the food and did the shopping and did the laundry and did the cleaning and blah blah blah. And my father was a district manager for Consolidated Edison, better known as Con Ed, the people that gave you your gas and electricity. And we were a fairly typical family in that sense. I was born when my parents, though, were pretty old. My mother was in her early 40s, and my mother and father were about the same age. And my mother told me that the doctor said that she wasn't fit to have a baby and that she shouldn't have a baby. And my mother, being an Italian Catholic, said, well, that's not what's going to happen. So I suppose that's why I'm against abortion, because I wouldn't be here if they had it. But anyway, so here I am, and in this house with two older people, not a young couple, And I also had a sister who was 15 years older than I was, and she was raised, with their full attention. And then she went off on her own, and I got raised with their full attention. So that's kind of how that was. And I had a different feature to my growing up, which is that I had asthma, which nobody had in those days, and it would lay me out, and I would get pneumonia, double pneumonia. I nearly died a few times. It's a long story, but it wasn't. It was just one more added weight for my parents to deal with, an unhealthy child. And so that put me behind in school and behind in social interaction and all that stuff. But what it really did for me was that it caused me to focus on music and the radio and the television and records. And so that became my that's how I got through long days of really being sick and by myself. And so okay, so I went along like that, and then around 1956, I guess wonderful Elvis Presley came on the scene and shook everybody up. And so it's amazing because some people thought Elvis was actually a comedian and not really a singer because he was so crazy and so different. So once I could sing when I was a little guy. I could sing. It's the one thing I did that everybody asked me to do. And I remember going along in the car, in the 1950s with one of my cousins from my mother's side of the family, and hey, Donnie, sing us a song. So I would sing a little song. And so it was something that I could do. But and I guess I had to have a certain component of my nature, which was observance, because what I realized was that if I could learn to play the guitar and sing with it, that I could actually do some damage. And so I saw Elvis with the guitar, and that's what happened. I locked on to thinking about that, and I started by playing the ukulele because it was only 4 strings,
Wow.
and later on went on and got a guitar. And by that time, the folk thing was huge in 1958, and it was the biggest thing in the country. And all sorts of people started in folk groups who ended up in rock and roll bands. And of course, it produced many songwriters, of course, and the great Bob Dylan, who transformed songwriting and fused that folk thing into the rock thing. So he then had this effect on the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and all the rest of it. And it was an English language component to what they were doing after that. And that all came through this folk thing. Anyway, it's a very long and complicated story, but I kept playing and got good enough, to make a little living with the guitar. And so that's the beginning right there.
So did you take lessons or were you self-taught or
Say that again?
like to play the guitar? Did you take lessons or did you teach yourself?
Yeah, I taught myself, but I didn't, there was no, I got to emphasize to the folks listening out there that there was absolutely no way to find out anything about anything in those days. There were no instruction books. The video did not exist. So if you were in love with the guitar and you wanted to play the guitar like Elvis Presley or like some of the folk people played or the banjo, you had to wait till that group got on television, and you had to get up and make sure you were eagle-eyed and watching that show to seeing what they were doing with their right hand, and what they were doing with what chords they were playing and so on. But that's how you did that. And you learned from other kids, who knew things. But it was and it made it wonderful because it was a secret, and you were onto something that nobody else knew about. Now every college student is a rock and roll expert. It's pathetic and annoying because you have all these people that never paid any dues that talk like they know what they're talking about. In a time when all this, in other words, I was developing when all this great stuff was actually happening, and society was reacting from it. Because people were very Christian and very white and very middle class and very staid and very innocent. Really, they believed in everything. They believed in their church and their government and their leaders and Father Joe or whoever he was. And so that's how that was. And I progressed along, and pretty soon I decided that I wanted to do this, forever. So that's what happened.
So when you decided this was going to be your career path, how did your parents or friends, were they supportive of that?
Now, we didn't know the word supportive back in those days. The only thing that mattered in those days was being a good student and a good athlete. Nobody knew anything about the arts or any of that. This was a upper middle class environment that I was in, very white. You went to the best college, you married the best family, the girl from the best family, you got the best job, all that bullshit. So there was no supportive of anything. Deciding to be a musician in those days from the environment that I came from was like deciding to go from Father Knows Best to joining the circus.
So
But you did it anyways. So what was your plan? How did you go about it?
Well, I did it because my father, who was adamantly opposed and wanted to keep me on the right track, of course, in the right class, in the right environment. died almost in front of me, and are pretty close. If they hadn't taken my father away because I called the hospital, I would have awakened to a dead man in the bed,
Wow.
which would have messed me up psychologically more than I already am. So luckily, Dad died in the hospital, and it was a terrible blow. And from that point on, everything was gone. I didn't have a family. I had my mom, who I really loved a lot, but she supported me, but she was in bad shape. She had to make huge adjustments herself because she'd always had a wonderful life with my father and their friends, it was a really nice life. And now it was all shattered. And so this was 1961. So I had there's in The Exorcist, rather the Equalizer movie. I forget which one it is. I'm a film fan,
Hmm.
Denzel Washington. I think it's the second one. He tells the guy who's running off with his daughter in order to hurt his ex-wife, and he's following him on the train going to Turkey to get the daughter back. He said he's telling him how much pain he could possibly have if he doesn't if he doesn't return that child, right? And he said there's two kinds of pain: the kind of pain that hurts and the kind of pain that alters. But losing my father was the kind of pain that alters.
Mm.
So I was never the same after that. And I could not connect with, I did my work and I did all the things I was supposed to do. I was always civilized and respectful, but I had a dream of what I was going to do, and now, nothing was going to stop me.
And so, you this was right out of high school, or
I got out of high school, barely. Iona Prep, but they were very good. It was a very good school, and I needed Iona Prep. And my grandmother had actually paid for an insurance policy because my dad died in freshman year, 1961. So my grandmother had bought a policy. I don't know why she was prescient like that, but which paid for me to stay in for the next 3 years for nothing. So I didn't have to move anywhere thanks to my grandmother. I graduated and I went to Villanova University for about 4 months. And then I quit school and decided I just couldn't stand it anymore. I didn't like Villanova. I didn't like school. It had never been all that easy for me. And I decided, because by now in 1961, it's hard to imagine, but there were hundreds of little coffee houses all around the country. In every little city, there'd be an empty storefront that the local folks would have put out tables and chairs and had a little stage, and they would have enough money, to hire, a folk singer to come there and sing. So that's the environment that I had around me, which was perfect for me. Most of the people that did this kind of thing were amateurs like myself. They really didn't know anything except how to play some chords on the guitar and, working on things, singing on an arrangement of something or finding a song they liked or whatever. So I did that for a while, and I realized that I was going nowhere, but I was able to be managed by the most important manager of this kind of music in the whole business, a man named Harold Leventhal. And I started with him. That's a long story I won't go into, but it was because of a tape I made in my high school that I got to him through my uncle, who was in the haberdashery business, and I knew that Harold was in the haberdashery. It's a long story, but anyway, a year after I put this tape out, I got a call from them saying, "Could you come to New York? We think you have talent. We'd like to
hmm,
work with you." Can you believe that? So
Mm.
just when
wow.
I quit school, I get this call. So I go there. I don't know anything about anything. I'm not a New York City person at all. I'm a rube, basically, from a middle class environment, but I'm still a rube. And so I got the pictures taken and I got the biography written. I didn't know what they could write about because I hadn't done anything, but I did that. And suddenly they were having showcases for me, at the bitter end or the gaslight or whatever. And my knees were knocking, I'd go on stage and have to sing for half an hour. And oh, Lord. So, but I had these songs and these arrangements, and I actually won the 1964 folk singing contest. It was a big thing. What was it now? I can't remember what it was, but what was it now? Anyway, so I had these little things that would encourage me to keep on. And that's why I did drop out and do that. And I met a man named Charles Close who worked with Harold Leventhal, who really, really loved me. And he really taught me so many things about performing because you have to learn how to be a performer, at least in the days when I was coming up, what to do on stage, how to program your songs and how to. So anyway, it was determined. The World's Fair in 1964 was out on Long Island, and I won the folk singing contest, and they gave me a 3-foot high trophy. And I remember I had some friends that drove me. I said, "Mom, I'll bring back the trophy tonight." And she was, "Oh, Donnie, saying it was just my mother." I mean, I came up the stairs with this big trophy, man. It was. I was always making my mother crazy, because I would do these things. Like when I was a little boy, I was a little boy and I had all these grown-ups in the house. And I think either I was in the way or I was making them laugh from some cute little thing, right? Not recommended. You should have a brother or a sister to take some of the heat. But I told my mother, I said, someday, Mom, I'm going to be very famous as a singer and I'm going to buy you a mink coat. And they used to roar about that. You know what Donnie said? He's going to be famous and buy Betty a mink coat. Oh, my God. Well, there's a picture of my mother in her mink coat going to Carnegie Hall to see me in 1973 or 4. That's right. So that was the kind of environment we were in. And just progressed, and I carried all this music with me, old-fashioned popular music, rock and roll, simple rock and roll. It was kind of like folk music, 3 chords, maybe 4, and nothing fancy, and folk music. And so those 3 things are really all that I know about. And I always keep learning these things. I'm always learning new songs or hearing something, that I'll say, "Oh, that's a nice song. I'm going to sing that one," But nothing like Judy Collins. Judy Collins, who's a friend of mine, she attracts these people that write these artistic, wonderful songs. I don't know how she does it. She's absolutely amazing. She really is amazing. And I've worked with her many times, and she'll be on before me, and we'll be in either we'll play a great gig or some shitty gig. But if it's a shitty gig, we'll be in a basement somewhere, and her road manager will wall off a certain area. She'll have her lights and her makeup and her everything else, and she's putting on a show as if she were in front of 100,000 people. She has standards, and it's a very good thing. And I have standards, and I really love her.
So at some point, you got hooked up with Pete Seeger.
Well, that was what happened. You see, the folk thing was the way I figured out I could make a living.
Mm-hmm.
But the rock thing required me to be in a group with other people, and I don't like to do things any other way but my way.
Mm-hmm.
So by being solo, I had control over that. Having control over what I was doing was essential. I didn't want anybody else's opinion. I knew what I was doing. So the rock thing appealed to me enormously, and I'd been in little rock and roll groups, but I didn't want it. So the folk thing came along beautiful, right? So I started in the folk realm. I really fell in love with, and I still am in love with, the Weavers.
Mm-hmm.
and I got to know all of them very well. And lastly, in the 60s, I began. Seeger and I had written each other, but Pete would write back to anybody. That's the kind of person that he was. I know if any young man or woman that wrote him a letter, he would find time to write back. He was a remarkable man. And so I was working my way up to you, babe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And first I had Fred Hellerman, and I knew Lee Hayes and all that in the early 60s, but I was working my way to Seeger. And finally he saw me sing somewhere. I think it was around 1967 in Amenia, New York. And he shook my hand. And from that point on, I started working. He would call me to come and sing with him or to be, with some other singers or what. He was very generous about that. And so I got involved with the Hudson River Sloop at the beginning of it. And that was very exciting because it was, the idea of that was, I graduated from college in 1968. And now I'm involved more and more with the sloop. And I'd moved up to Cold Spring, New York, and lived in this little gatehouse, which was on the property owned by a man named James Benenson Jr., who was one of the smartest people I ever knew, and who became a business manager of mine, and who set me up to become a wealthy man, which I am today. But at that time, I lived in his little gatehouse, and I wrote, I think more than 50% of the best songs I ever wrote in that little house when I was struggling and there was hardly any heat. And I was around all these creative people. It was a marvelous, marvelous time for me. In fact, the 1960s, from 1960 when my father died, which was a sad thing, all the way through the first record I made in 1970, Tapestry, were the most wonderful years of my life in terms of creativity, because I was just writing and thinking and learning, and and I was so dumb and white, and from such a dumb and white place that I couldn't help but learn all the time. There was so much to learn I didn't know about. But I still love Eisenhower anyway. But so that was going on, and then the second record I made, I became the #1 recording star of the world.
Yeah.
But I had learned how to perform in all those years in the 60s in those little nightclubs. So I performed solo in those years in the 70s, and there are a lot of videos of me, doing Babylon, The Audience, and Albert Hall, and they're all out there. And so I knew kind of what I was doing. You really have to be ready for this stuff. Even Taylor Swift started when she was 14.
Yeah. Yeah, so you and I have sort of a connection. I mean, I grew up in Poughkeepsie, which is on the Hudson, and I've seen the Clearwater sail by many times and been to a lot of the towns that you mentioned. So, yeah.
Well, do you know that when we were making this movie, not American Troubadour, The Day the Music Died, the story of Don McLean's American Pie, I helped start the Hudson River Sloop. I raised a lot of money for the Hudson River Sloop. After I was famous, I drew enormous amounts of people to at least 2 of their festivals. I edited one of their books. And when we went to them to ask them to make a comment or whatever, they did not want to be involved because of my divorce.
Oh, geez.
And I say, fuck the Hudson River Sloop, okay? And all that woke bullshit, because I really was annoyed about that. So if you're out there, anybody, screw you, okay? I'll never do another thing for you, and I'll never say another good word about you.
Okay, fair enough.
Boy, I feel better. Wow.
All right.
Man, I feel good.
So, I mean, we can't talk to you without mentioning American Pie. I mean, it's such a iconic song.
Well, you could, but I don't want you to.
Yeah. So
I'm proud of him. I'm proud of that song. You don't have to worry about that. I love that song. I'm very, very proud of it. And I really mean that.
When you wrote it, did you know that it was going to become what it has become? I mean, did
You
you?
cannot, you can never ever know things like that.
Yeah. I was just wondering
You
if
just
you
can't
felt like,
ever know anything like. I wish I could say something that would put it into the proper perspective, but all I knew was that I was a powerful
hmm
songwriter and singer with powerful ideas. There were predecessors to this song, like Orphans of Wealth and Magdalene Lane, and songs like that, Tapestry, that were on the Tapestry album, but I had no idea. That's why this movie, The Day the Music Died, the
hmm
story of Don McLean's American Pie, is something I'm so happy about because anybody who would watch this thing, you'll have a wonderful experience realizing exactly what I was going through. I brought, I had this done, right? And I heard a song, I heard an album called Bird on a Wire, which Ed Freeman had produced.
hmm
And it was Tim Hardin, who's one of my favorite singers and songwriters. And I thought, this is such a beautiful record. I mean, really, I'd heard other albums that he'd done, and there's always, beautiful elements there. Tim Hardin 1 was lovely.
hmm
I don't know who produced it, Koppelman and Rowe, but it said, but there was a nice record, a lot of great songs on that, Misty Roses, and but this record was beautiful. I said, I want this guy to produce me, Ed Freeman. So I tell my manager at the time, I want Ed Freeman. The manager asked the record company, who was run by, and they had a guy named Nick Vinay, who was, kind of a finger snapper. I did not like this cat. I didn't like him at all. I said, this guy thinks he's going to do this and grab the money. I knew it right away. My instincts, I'm half Italian and they're very good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I fought for Ed. We don't want Ed Freeman. Okay. Well, I do. Blah, blah, blah. Big fight right there. So I finally get Ed Freeman and we bring him the Tapestry album and we bring him some other stuff. Ed Freeman doesn't want me. I don't think this guy is all that good.
Wow.
So I said, no, I am not good and I want you. So I'm fighting both at once, right? So we get in the studio. He's getting the money, which is all these guys care about.
hmm
And he's got this attitude toward me. And I'm in there and a wonderful thing happened though. He took me up to a place called Dick Cutler's recording studio. It was a little place. We got some cats there and we started working on some records. And there's a version of Winterwood that we did that I just loved. It was never quite as good on the record, but it was beautiful. And everything was beautiful. I was so excited. The stuff he was doing was just what I wanted him to do. And as time went by, he began to realize that I was for real. I really knew where I was going, what I was doing, and that he should listen to me. And he did. And so, as we progressed, we finally got through and we created this album, which today, I mean, that thumb and that picture and that record and those songs on there, I'm very proud of that. And Ed and I did that together. And, you know, so this is what it takes sometimes, when you're not an artist sitting home with a blank canvas and
Right.
deciding to do Guernica or something. I mean, you have to work with people.
Yeah.
That is not my strong suit. It's not my strong suit. I do not work well with people. I go only so far until they do something that annoys me. And then I say, this ain't going to happen. And that's why I have the reputation I have for being difficult. Well,
I mean, you could.
If you're not difficult, you get walked all over.
Yeah,
You have to be, I'm not the female, I'm not the male version of Faye Dunaway by any means, but I do have things that I, want to be a certain way. And God damn it, my name is on the record, not theirs.
There you go. I mean, You're putting it out, so gotta be.
Anyway, it all turned out better than I could ever have imagined. I really mean it.
All right, Kat.
Was yeah, was there any concern about American Pie being such a long song?
I didn't care about that. Once the album got out, all I cared about was albums. I wanted to make albums.
Well,
So
and
once the album was released, United Artists bought the song really because they liked American Pie. They liked the chorus, they liked everything. They cut it down to a short song of about 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes, which was all chorus and like two verses, and it went to number one. And then the thing that's interesting is that the Tapestry album made me an underground radio favorite. Pete Fornatale would play that record all day long in New York City. It was played on WMMR in Philadelphia. It was played on all these different stations all over the country. This album was beloved on FM radio. And all of a sudden, here I come with this Bobby Sherman hit record, 3 minutes long that goes to number one. And my other fans, they're shocked. So they call in and they say, hey, that's not, they all bought the record, of course, because followed Tapestry. They call up and they say, that's not the song. The song is 8 minutes long. So they kept petitioning all the radio stations to play the real song. So they would have to bring the album into the control booth to play the 8-minute version because, believe it or not, in 1971, they did not have the technology to play 8.5 minutes as a single.
Mm.
So, wow. So therefore, the song went to number one as 8.5 minutes. And that's the song that held the record that Taylor Swift toppled with her version of something she wrote, which lasted 6 months, before somebody toppled her with something else.
well, you held the record a very long time.
I never even knew I had the record. I don't care.
Like got broken.
I like George Harrison. He said, you keep the fame, I'll take the money.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to say, but he's been through it more than anybody else, but that's the truth. The money is the thing you need to protect yourself against so much out there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about the single. So with the record, because, I had a record player and all of that and the singles. So did the record play like you played half the song and then had to flip it over to play the other?
That was the second thing because they didn't have the technology to put a single of 8.5 minutes on one side of anything. So what they did was they put out this short single that went to number one. They played the whole cut from the album in the booth when they were doing the top 40. And then they put out a single with part one and part two on it, side one and side two, for the jukeboxes. So that's the story of that.
Mm.
Wow.
And another thing that's interesting is whenever it gets played, I get paid like it was 2 records instead of 1. Oh, man, do I love that. I have 2 number ones. Oh, and then Vincent, that's 3. Oh, and Crying, that's 4. Oh,
There
take it.
you go. That's awesome.
You were a visionary. Well, so when you were writing American Pie and really the songs on Tapestry, I mean, do you, when you're writing, like, what's the process like? Do you just get like a phrase, or does the melody come to you first, or how does it work?
Honestly, I've been asked that question a lot. I can't answer it. All I know is that when I turn the tape recorder on and I have an idea and I start singing, I usually sing the lyrics and the melody together.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't do one or the other. I don't do that. It all comes out of me sort of the same together. And then I try to establish what kind of structure I want for the song. Because it comes out of me together in the beginning, I know what the lyric style is going to be. song I write has a different lyric style. Wonderful baby, living on love. The Sandman says maybe he'll take you above. That is not American Pie. That is not Vincent. That is not Castles in the Air. Castles in the Air is a much longer line. And if you ask me why, you can tell her that I told you that I'm time. It's a whole different thing.
Mm.
Everything I do is different.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like that, that music is alive somehow and it kind of comes out and you're just like the medium for it?
Totally right. I tune
Interesting.
things on my radio. There's actually a wonderful gospel song, Turn Your Radio On.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. I turn my radio on.
And
Hmm.
that's what comes out.
Yes, that's really what I do.
Very cool.
That's why I can't tell you what I do because I don't know what I do, but I just know how to do it and I know what to do with it. And that's important.
So after your success with, having American Pie and Tapestry, what, how did you top that in your mind? Like, are you thinking,
Well, this is the thing to remember. Um, I continue to have success all the time. Every album that I put out on Universal was a gold record. Later on, I had more hits, but it was never the same as American Pie. That is a unique thing that is just what it is. It's not like a real hit record. It's like three hit records at once.
Mm.
So I had plenty of success all my career. I've made enormous amounts of money, but it ain't the same as that. And what are you going to say? Lightning struck, and that particular thing was created. And luckily, because of Ed Freeman, we captured lightning in a bottle. In spite of all the arguing and everything else.
Mm.
Believe you me, okay. There are a million guys who were in studios with producers who argued about things where the records never came out or never sold 2 copies. So we were different. We knew what we were after. And Ed said this in that movie. He said, we knew together that one way or other we were going to come out with a great record, even if we had to kill each other.
oh, wow. Well, that is a very interesting backstory. Vincent, let's talk a little bit about that because, there's a book for children, as I understand it, that's illustrated and, about Van Gogh. What fascinated you about his life that
I want to talk about Vincent for a moment. The book is written by Judith Proffer. It is the brainchild, both my children's books are the brainchild of Spencer Proffer and his wife, Judith Proffer. And the illustrations are by Yoko Matsuoka. And Yoko Matsuoka won a Moonbeam Award for this Vincent book, which is a very high honor. Now, there's a whole world of children's books that I'm learning about. All these Vincent books will have this gold seal on it because it received this Moonbeam Award because Yoko Matsuoka's illustrations on both books are sensational. And I just want to make that very clear. He's a very important part of this. We have a plan to put out 5 of these in total. The next one will be Castles in the Air, then And I Love You So, and then Tapestry.
oh, wow.
And this is going to be an animated feature. Both these books, either in conjunction with one another or separately, will be animated features for children. This is going to be a big thing and a very nice thing. And I'm only a small part of this. I wrote the songs, I gave the interviews, I wrote introductions. I like to do interviews to promote it, but it's a wonderful thing to have some little token of real childhood, for these kids who are being assaulted by, uh, the new world we live in with computers.
Well, it's interesting that you get to be a part of, so many adults in their lives, and now your work also will be, a part of children's lives.
Well, that was Spencer's idea, not mine.
Well,
He asked if we could do it, and I said I'd love to do it, and they did it more beautifully than I would ever imagine. So I'm just very proud to be out and talking about it.
what did it feel like to see the illustrations, like to see the visual part of your, of what you hear as music, and then you're seeing?
But I
Uh,
don't know where they found this illustrator, but he's magnificent. I mean, the thing about it is that when you look through the book, I don't care what age you are, either of these books, it's enchanting.
yeah,
And I raised two kids, and I read to them all the books that were around, Polar Express and that big one that everybody had, Midnight Moon, Goodnight Moon, and many, many others. And I'm familiar with the world of children's literature, but these books stand out. They're going to do very well, and they're going to be good things for children. And I'm really happy about that because I don't like the fact that they grow up too fast.
yeah. Well, you're touring a lot. Um, do you still like going out there and being, performing live?
I
And
I don't do anything I don't like.
yeah,
Long ago, this is the benefit of making the decision that I made back in 1961 when my father died. I was never going to do anything I didn't want to do, and I didn't care what the price was. I was fabulously successful in 1971 and 72, and I wouldn't go out sometimes to sing in the summertime because I wanted to be home in the summer and I wanted to do other things. So I really just do what I want to do, and that's the beautiful benefit about having any kind of success as an artist. You must keep your mind on your art and on your life and not always on the money, because if you allow money to rule you, you're no different from, the people that you thought you were rebelling against.
Hmm.
You know,
Interesting.
that's a fact. So the only thing you have is your integrity and your put the money out of the live below your means. I have lived way below my means always so that nothing can rock my lifestyle.
Hmm. Don, can we talk about American Boys? Tell us about the genesis of that project and how it all came about.
Well, 6 of the 12 songs on there I wrote with a former guitar player named Vipperman.
Mm-hmm.
And I took some stuff he had around and finished it and fixed it up and added verses and put the melodies to it and everything else. And because I was kind of bored, it was during the pandemic, and we came up with some lovely songs. The Gypsy Road is really nice, and then I wrote another 6 songs, The Meanest Girl, and then a song called the Marleys song, Save Yourself, one of my favorites on the record. So that's how it kind of happened. And the same company that put this album out is going to be releasing, I think, 17 more albums of mine on vinyl and CD. So if you go into Barnes and Noble, you're going to be loaded with Don McLean. I'll tell you that right
Wow.
now. It's all happening, baby. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. uh, so any projects you have going on or things
Yeah,
coming?
there's one other project, and that is a Broadway show.
Oh.
Yeah, and I just did a Zoom call with some guys who really are ready to do this. They've done quite a few of them. It would just be called, can't you see this on Broadway? American Pie. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, I want to see that. Oh Lord. And it's basically the story of the bookazine, the story of the children's books, the story in the movie, The Day the Music Died, the story of Don McLean's American Pie. And that is a wonderful documentary. Mark Morman did a fantastic job on that. I can't believe how beautifully he found footage of me at exact moments when things were happening. There were people taking. I am not. I've never been anointed. I've never been a big star. There are people that are anointed by Rolling Stone, from the very beginning, and they're on the cover and all that. Like, what was his name? The guy that did Wild World, Cat Stevens. Oh my God, they were right up that guy's ass. They loved that guy, And I don't know. I think a lot of those songs sound like bubblegum to me now, but I like him. I liked his records, but I'm just saying, I was never one of those guys. But somehow, from the very beginning in 1968, I was being memorialized in these movies. A guy named Bob Elfstrom, who was a Swedish filmmaker, saw me at a party at Pete's house, and I was singing some tunes. He said, "I want to make a movie about you for Swedish television." I hadn't recorded the first record. So he started doing that. He got money and everything else. And my journey was on my journey. And you can see quite a few of those performances. I'm very young and sweating and wearing a blue, army shirt and singing Orphans of Wealth and Vincent, all the same songs. He got all that from the very beginning.
I read a story about there was a bomb scare at one of your concerts or something, and
well, that's right in the movie. That's right in American Troubadour.
Oh, okay.
That was at Columbia University. I performed 2 shows there, and back in those days, in the '60s, bomb scares were routine.
Yeah.
Now, oh boy, they get hazmat people. They come in their outfits and axes in hand and everything. Oh, sorry, nothing to it.
Right.
In those days, you can see it on that movie of The Day the Music Died. I'm singing a song called "On the Amazon," and this man comes and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Well, I got to talk to you folks. We've had a phone call. We'd like you to look around your feet. You see anything that looks funny? You put up your hand, please." Nobody put up their hand. Okay, so that was it. So we went back to singing the song.
Wow. That's funny.
Wow.
All right, Kat, I'm going to let you ask one more question before we let Don go.
It's always hard to ask the last one, but I'll just use some of your song lyrics. And I knew if I had the chance, I could make the people dance and maybe they'd be happy for a while. Do you feel like you've done that? You've made people happy for a while?
I really do. I've made them happy, but in an informed way, which is the way to make people happy, not in a stupid way.
Right.
In an informed way. They're happy, not only because they're happy because of the music and the singing and the melody and the song, but also because of the things they're learning from this crazy song that I made so many years ago. It continues to do that. And it goes to something that's very important, because I said to you, I know about old-fashioned popular music, early rock and roll, and folk music. And folk music is the most important part of those 3 things, because that's the music that gives you information, that tells you about different things, that talks about people and events and things happening. And that's all part of American Pie.
Well, this has certainly been an interview that I've looked forward to, and it has not disappointed. So I am so appreciative of your time, and you're taking that time to be on our podcast.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your feelings for me. They make me very happy. It matters to me. It really does. And I was really happy to be on your show. And I think I probably talk too much, but I always do.
we kind of appreciate, well, we like it that way. Let's put it that way.
Oh, right. Good.
because we want to hear, everything that you have to say. And, it's been such an honor.
Got to hear the backstory, man.